Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
It's only a movie.
No, it's only the Johnnie Bobbo show is what it is, and you're listening to the Johnnie Bobbo show. I don't know. I think that was
look,
cool, though.
I tried to take the easy way and take the audio from a YouTube video, and I ended up playing the video with the actual talking in it, not the music. That's annoying. My apologies.
That's all right, though. It sounded good. She almost sounds as good as I do.
My apologies for that. So,
no apologies, Bob or Keith. See, Keith, you are the best. I'm gonna tell you that right now. So that's a Mr. Keith Grieve of the 87sportsfans.com. I am also. I'm John Maloris, and we have our guy Bob Sullivan. He is from the NoCoastBias.com, so check all that stuff out. Great websites, great stuff there. But what we're here to talk about right now in the World Series, you know, when a road team starts off 0-2, they've only come back to win 7 out of 36 matchups. And we're going to bring our guy Homer Bush on, former World Series champion, 1998. He's going to tell us a little about the New York Mets, tell us what they need to do to, at least shake some of that rust off. They're coming back home. Maybe they can bounce back. He's going to let us know how. But also get into a little bit like guys like Mike Moustakas. At the moment, he's leading all other players in the World Series with an a .889 OPS, and is actually, he's focusing more so on hitting low in the zone. And that's something Homer Bush wrote a book about. So we're going to talk to him a little bit about that later on. You want win $1 million with DraftKings with FanDuel. Guess what? We got our guy, Jim Sarentius, Fantasy Greek. He's going to come on, tell us the best matchups for Week 8. Also, all your top, your Ask TFG, hashtag those questions. He's going to be answering those for us. Starts, sits, waiver wire pickups, sleepers. He's got it for you. He's all yours in the 10 o'clock hour. And then moving on, man, it's Halloween. You know, we had to start with the perfunctory, Thriller song. I mean, that's everybody. It's Halloween, so everybody seems to love Thriller. That's got a pretty awesome beat, wouldn't you say, Keith? You got to go with that.
well, yeah, I would have if I would have found the right clip to play.
Well, no, it doesn't matter. But I mean, that's
You
the
should have gotten the version from 13 going on 30, because that was the best version of Thriller. When Jennifer Gardner and Ruffalo are dancing to that song.
No, I've never watched that, so I'll take your word for it.
Okay, well, let me just say this about Mark Ruffalo. This guy is one of the best actors that doesn't get any credit for being one of the best actors. This guy, you know what he is? He's the player to be named later that ends up being a big part of that trade in a baseball trade. Because look at Mark Ruffalo. Whenever there's a movie coming out, Just Like Heaven with Reese Witherspoon, 13 going on 30, that movie, The Avengers, it's always like, oh, Robert Downey Jr., Reese Witherspoon, Jennifer Gardner. Oh, yeah, and by the way, Mark Ruffalo will be in this movie. And then he steals the show with how great he is in that movie. That's who I would compare Mark Ruffalo to.
Or if he's in a movie with Jennifer Gardner, it's pretty much he just looks that much better because she's that awful at acting. I can't stand Jennifer Gardner.
Are you kidding?
No,
she was great.
I hate her voice. She's a horrible actress. Horrible.
Yeah, Alias? That wasn't like 8 seasons.
Wait, is Mark Ruffalo better than Mark Ruffalo?
Hey, don't you dare mess up his name.
Dude, you don't want to see him when he's angry, all right?
I don't think it was me that messed up his name, but I'll just leave it at that.
Hey, Mark Ruffalo is he's our generation's Jimmy Stewart.
Golf.
I'm kidding. I am kidding.
He sounds like a flooded Edsel when he talks.
No, I love Ruffalo. I also love Jimmy Stewart, but Ruffalo does not get the credit he deserves.
Yeah, Ruff.
Thank you, Thriller, for bringing up that conversation.
Yeah, poor Ruff, man. Ruff's got it rough. But what we're gonna do here again, it's Halloween. Halloween weekend. It falls on a Saturday, so everybody get crazy because that's the way it works. When you have a holiday like that, then it winds up on the weekend. But if you're gonna dress up as a member of Van Halen, I suggest you know the backstory. So we're bringing our guy in, Greg Renoff, author of Van Halen Rising. He's going to join us to delve into every man's fantasy of being a rock and roll / sex icon and what it takes to get.
I got man fantasies, but
man, I was David Lee Roth for Halloween. As a matter of fact, probably like 5 or 6 years ago.
I'd like to be Gary. You know, we should go as all
Gary
three of the lead singers from Van Halen. You should go as David Lee Roth. I'll go as Gary Sharon, and Keith can go as Sammy Hagar.
That's all right. Because honestly, I'm going to break a lot of hearts here, but like Sammy Hagar was probably my favorite era.
I'm with you. I liked Humans Being. I liked, I
51,
liked Right Now.
5150 was a good album. For Unlawful Carnal Knowledge was a good album.
I guess we can get into this with Greg, but the whole thing with David Lee Roth is he said, my music made you want to go get laid, drive fast cars.
Yeah.
And Sammy's music made you want to go fall in love and drive a Nissan.
Oh,
Better
no.
quotes from David Lee, DLR on that topic.
He's so great, though.
He is.
I mean, well, Sharon is terrible, but the other two were both great in their own right.
Yeah,
it was three completely different bands is what we had.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
He's like a hairless chihuahua now, David Lee Roth. It's not a good look. That hair is so fried out and stringy. But he's a crazy guy. I dig him,
You're digging dudes?
Yeah, I guess.
Well, how about this? We're going to wrap up the show later on today with our guy Bobbo, Bobbo's Buffet. And, a little food for thought here, kind of going into it. Cole Beasley, his wife going off on a Twitter rampage, NBA, losing an icon, Flip Saunders, on the opening weekend of the NBA. He leaves us, and then Lenny Dykstra considering a name change to Lenny Dustra because this guy just doesn't stop. Somebody get the bottle out of his hand.
Keith put it into the inappropriate category.
Oh, it's already there. It's already there.
Yeah, no. You need to lock that man in a room.
Don't you go talking about Dykstra.
No, I can't handle that, man. But if you want to talk to us about Lenny Dykstra, maybe a little Van Halen,
how many times in your
all
life?
that action, give us a call, 585-623-7487, or tweet us at Ellen Sports Radio. What was that, Keith?
How many times in your life have you uttered that phrase? I can't handle that, man.
Not often. Not often. I'm very strong from behind.
Buzzing. All right.
Yeah. I got big shoulders, bro. But that's what
I guess since the last time I was on this show, it's gotten rather homoerotic.
Really?
That's to do with Cody coming on, but
that's erotic for you, Bob? I don't know what that says about you.
I take pride in my homoeroticism stuff.
Well, I guess we do come on here because we occasionally talk the sports ball on this program here, and you have to be pretty excited right now, Bob. This is your time. I'm sure you finally aired your mega interview. Did your big NBA guest?
No, I have not with Smoggy Walker. No, I have not. I have some beef with that man, but yes, I will not air that beef publicly. But I do have some confrontation with him.
Oh, what's that? What's that story?
I am not going to air it publicly, but I do have some conflict going with him right now.
Was this all over the internet? Like you guys yelling at each other via Facebook message?
It was in a phone call.
It was in a phone call. Well, at least it's kind of manning up a little bit, I guess, on a phone call at least.
Is that why I saw another show tweeting that Samaki Walker's going to be joining them weekly now?
Yes, there's a confrontation over that too. Yes.
Oh man.
I like. I'm not going to get into it over the air, but yes, there's some.
That's fine. Yeah, all I'm telling you, Bob, is you need to find some great characters to work with, like a Mark Grody or Greg Renoff, Cody Vancura, Jim Sarantias, all these fun guys are bringing out.
I have found people over the years, and
yeah, you found me.
He has been one of them. However, there's beef right now. I mean, it'll get smoothed over at some point.
You can squash it. Just takes.
I'm good at squashing beefs, but I'm just saying that there's a little bit of a there's a rough patch in the road. There's a pothole right now in the road that we need to get filled, and that's so once I get filled, then I will.
Well, don't. Yeah, that's fine, dude. Just don't wait on the city of Chicago to take care of that for you, because it's never going to happen. But in the city of Chicago.
Yeah, neither will what's her name, Lady Mayor here in Omaha. I can't remember what her name is, but she's terrible at filling potholes. 108th has been under construction for like the last year, and there's no reason for it to be under construction at all. Sorry.
Aren't you gravel? Can't you just take some dirt and put it in there?
I would think so, but Lady Mayor decides to ruin my route to work sometimes.
Are you as surprised as I am that there's 108 streets in Omaha?
Hey, there's like 216.
They start at 100.
Why don't you suck my... Yeah.
Whoa, all right.
We're already there, dude. It doesn't matter.
I know.
As long as you get it out of the way in like the first 10 minutes of the show. I mean, we already know we're going to be explicit. It all works.
Somebody talk sports for the love of God.
Segment.
Yeah, I was trying to. Chicago Bulls, man. We got the Phantom of the United Center, Derrick Rose. He's back on the court, doing his thing, looking tough. Kind of driving to the hole. He's actually. This is the craziest thing about this. Okay, so he made his comeback and was going through all the practices and everything like that, and they got elbowed in the face and fractured his orbital bone. And now, after they had put his face back together and whatever, apparently his eyes aren't aligned the same way they were. Like one is shifted a little bit lower than the other, so it's making it more difficult for him to make a jump shot. And he's talking about when he drives to the rim a lot of the times now, he's shutting one of his eyes. I mean, how intense is that, Bob? That's got to be pretty crazy, completely altering your game and shutting one of your eyes. Because if you close an eye, you lose all depth perception. That seems like a bad idea for a superstar to have.
Well, yeah, that's not good. That's really not
no,
good.
Not good.
I would say if I was Derrick, with Derrick Rose, I guess the question came up today of how are your eyes? And he said, well, I see two of you right now. It's not good.
No, it's not.
This isn't Rocky Balboa in Rocky 4 versus Ivan Drago when Duke says, how you feeling? He says, I see three of them out there. And Uncle Paulie says, hit the one in the middle. You can't really do that if you're, Rocky Balboa, or if you're Derrick Rose. It's not hit the one in the middle. This isn't boxing where your brain can be messed up and you can still win.
Right.
Derrick Rose, he needs to find kind of a way to get his eyes lined back up so that he doesn't have this double vision issue. And I feel bad for the guy.
Yeah.
In a sense, but he's kind of a douche.
Yeah, well, let me ask you this. I mean, because I get the inside perspective, obviously being in Chicago, but when you look at Derrick Rose's whole situation, first 3 years, I mean, guy couldn't have been better. Everybody loved him. Last 3 years have been an absolute disaster. Constantly getting hurt with significant injuries, out for the season. The way he approaches the media hasn't always been considered the greatest. And in terms of whatever message he has. It hasn't gotten out well. The guy's not a great public speaker, and it shows frequently and almost daily. Whenever you get a clip it, a little snippet from that guy, and I don't know. A lot of people in Chicago are looking for some other hero that's not Derrick Rose at the moment. You know what I mean? They're hoping Jimmy Butler is going to be that guy, because right now Jimmy Butler, I don't know if you'd call him a star. He's clearly not a superstar yet.
He's a star. I wouldn't call him a superstar just yet, but he is a star.
Yeah,
he's probably I'd put him in the top 5 shooting guards in the league right now, and I would say Rose. What's his name? Tom Thibodeau gets a fair amount of crap for ruining Rose's career by playing him in the fourth quarter of Game 1 against the Sixers in in the playoffs, and I think it was 2012 when he tore his ACL.
Right.
They were up by 12 with like a minute 30 left or something like that. People give him a fair amount of crap about that, which I will say this: no lead is safe, no matter how no matter how big it is in the playoffs. So I don't blame him at all, Thibodeau at all, for playing Rose that long. Man, Rose was injured that whole season anyway. That was the 66-game shortened season. Injuries are going to happen. So I don't blame Thibodeau at all for that. And then with Rose, terrible public speaker. Doesn't think before he speaks, which I can sympathize with that. But
I'm sure.
Yeah, this team, the problem has been at the end of the year is, Kirk Heinrich is playing 45 minutes a game because Rose is out and nobody else is healthy. Yeah. And I find it fun, me and my brother were talking about this last night. Kirk Heinrich hadn't been in the game last night against the Nets as of like 5 minutes left in the fourth quarter. And my brother was like, well, you can chalk it up to they're not in the playoffs right now, and not everybody else is hurt. That's why Heinrich's not playing, which is a valid point. I'm not a huge fan of the Hoiberg hire, mainly because I wish Hoiberg would have stayed at Iowa State one more year to get Iowa State to the Final Four. But I think Chicago, I could see them being. They're either going to be a 1 through 5 seed. I mean, that's just the way it is. Actually, I'd say 2 through 5. I think Cleveland's going to get that 1 seed. But yeah, Chicago, Rose is no longer that guy in Chicago anymore. He's the other guy. Jimmy Butler is the guy in Chicago. He's not a superstar, but he is a star, and he is their go-to option on offense. Even though I wouldn't really as a person who loves the NBA, I wouldn't feel comfortable with my main go-to option being Jimmy Butler. He's really good on defense, but offensively, if that's my go-to option, I'm not confident in winning a title or getting to the finals. That's the way I see it.
Yeah, and who are you looking to come out of the Eastern Conference? Obviously, you're looking Cleveland's going to come out 1, and then it goes after Cleveland. You have what? Toronto, Atlanta, Chicago, Bucks, Milwaukee. After that, I think some people are jumping on the Bucks bus a little bit early. I think that a lot of those guys still have quite a bit of time yet to kind of develop. At least,
I would say
on Chris Middleton, Jabari Parker, Greg Monroe, all those guys got
Greek Freak and Jabari Parker get healthy. This team has a lot of upside. I like Miles Plumlee. I like, John Henson down low. I like Greg Monroe. There's a lot of pieces I like. Are they going to win the finals? No. Or are they going to they're going to be a second round team at best. But I think it's really Cleveland and then maybe Miami and Chicago, and that's it. Miami is really wavering on health. If Miami is not healthy, they don't have a shot, kind of like last year.
Right.
But Miami has good pieces. You got Bosch back. He looked good last night against the Hornets. Wade, if his minutes are managed properly, he can be valuable. You look at Justice Winslow off the bench. You look at Goran Dragic, who's one of the best point guards in the league. Amari Stoudemire on limited minutes can be valuable. You look at Gerald Green, who's a good three-point shooter, can jump out of the building. They got a lot of good pieces, but again, they have to stay healthy. If they don't stay healthy, this team more so than any other team, they have a lot more injury questions than they do answers as far as who's going to replace them. So, yeah, if Miami's healthy, they can. I think they're the best challenge to Cleveland, but ultimately, I see Cleveland coming out of the East. And actually, you know what? Looking at Cleveland right now, I'm going to say Cleveland does not get the 1 seed. I don't know who gets the 1 seed, but with how long Kyrie Irving's going to be out, and Mo Williams at the point guard, them having to run their offense through Kevin Love, I'm going to say they're going to be a 2 or 3 seed because, LeBron's going to take some time to get healthy. So I'm going to say who should get the 1 seed?
Well, let me ask you this. Where does Toronto fit into that whole picture for you? Because, last year they were both, one of the biggest surprises, jumping out to a 37-17 start, and then, winded up being one of the biggest disappointments, finishing off 12-16, and then getting swept in the first round by the Wizards. Do you expect, at least maybe some kind of maybe a style change, you know what I mean, from moving from like one of the NBA's worst ball movement teams, or do you expect that, it should help Lowry at least appear in top form in the preseason, and then, knowing that Joseph spent 4 seasons with the pass-heavy Spurs, is that something that might kind of push them towards the top of that crop a little bit?
I was big on Toronto last year going into the season. I'm not big on them right now. I like the addition of DeMar Carroll, but I feel like even with DeMar Carroll, I feel like they have too many pieces that at one position. There are too many guards and they have too many forwards. They don't have enough guys that can play multiple positions, and I think that's why I like Kyle Lowry, but this team, I think their peak I think they've reached their peak. I'm not a big fan of Dwayne Casey as a coach. I think he's kind of, pretty okay.
Pretty okay.
But I'd say this team will max out about a 4 or 5 seed, which there's nothing wrong with that, but they're not going anywhere.
Oh, they're going places. They got Louis Scola. They got Bismack Biyombo. You got 2 guys like that. Your team are going to win. Those are winners.
I do like Bismack Biyombo.
I just love
Scola. Scola was misused with the Pacers, and I do feel like they should have kept Lou Williams around. Lewis Williams, who's now with the Lakers, but but that's, I don't know. That's not a topic anybody wants to talk about, Lou Williams, whether he should be with the Raptors or not.
Yeah, no, nobody wants to hear about that. But you know what they do want to hear from? They want to hear from a World Series champion. 1998 New York Yankee, Homer Bush. He is coming on. He's going to talk to us a little bit about his new book that he wrote, Hitting Low in the Zone. And we're going to kind of recap maybe, quite a bit of, his experience in the pros, but also kind of delve into what's going on in the World Series now with the Mets going down 0-2, heading back home. They're going to get those bats going, and how did, Kansas City finally manage to develop their bats? It just seemed like it took so long. The team wasn't, ever reaching its potential, and a lot of that had to do with the fact that the bats weren't there when they thought they were. But now those bats are coming around, and here they are in back-to-back World Series, up 2-0, 2 wins away from winning the World Series. And when we come back, we're going to talk to Homer Bush at 585-623-7487. Give us a call if you'd like. Otherwise, give us a tweet at LN Sports Radio. But you're listening to the Johnny Bobbo Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com and on your Spreaker app.
Second to keep breathing in the moment before it's gone. You never know when others lost until you find just what it costs to be wrong. I wonder if you think of me passing by, you think you see me coming. I wonder if you pull me in, kiss me just one time again. will keep on coming, and the nights will keep on going till they're tired. Falling fast asleep, and as they dream of ghosts of beats filled with desire. The trance of life is all around, a chance to take is always found. Oh, writing on the lullabies, on the lonely living life. Oh, in the final hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side. In the final hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side. Take another second to keep breathing in the moment before it's gone. Never know when love is lost until you find just what it costs to be wrong. I wonder if you think of me passing by, you think you see me coming. I wonder if you pull me in, kiss me just one time again. The final hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side. In the final hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side. In the final hours of night, do you remember? Hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side. In the final hours of night, do you remember? Lost or found, love lying by your side.
Baby, you're a mystery. Tell me what's a girl gotta do? Looking at the history doesn't seem to give any clue. Just when I think I understand it all, you seem to
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Show on latenightsportsradio.com, on your Spreaker app, also on iTunes. Feel free to download us there. And since the Royals and the Mets have gotten into the World Series underway, we're going to bring in 1998 World Series champion Homer Bush. Homer Bush, how are you tonight, sir?
Outstanding. Thanks for having me.
No, absolutely. Yeah, we're bringing Homer on. You can find him on Twitter at Bush Homer, and you're doing all sorts of stuff. You wrote a book, Hitting Low in the Zone. I think, do you still do some coaching at all?
I coached with the Padres organization in 2014.
Okay.
And I took this year off to write the book because I felt like I had something to share with the public.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. And some of the guys that you were kind of coaching when you were coming along there was, what were some of like the mantras or maybe tips you kind of have them at least kind of keep in their brain when they're going up there to play? I know everybody's different and has different things to kind of concern themselves with, but a lot of times, at least from my standpoint as a hitter, I'm more concerned about my timing. Like, what's kind of one of the mantras that you kind of pass along to some of these guys?
Timing is good, but hey, you really have to have a plan. I always say you can't go up to the plate being a blank canvas every time you go to the plate. Just kind of see ball, hit ball. And with hitting low in the zone, I've found that most elite hitters, well, all elite hitters, have their production slightly down and outside the strike zone. To give you an example, I got like a Mike Trout. If he averaged 190 hits a year, he's getting literally 130 hits from his knees down to the ground. So that's mainly due to opportunity. So you've got to build the mechanics to handle where most of the opportunities are going to be for you as a hitter.
Yeah, and kind of what are some of the benefits when you are focusing specifically on just maybe a portion of the zone? How does having that approach at least benefit you as a hitter? Where is it maybe easier to find your pitch if you're just kind of focused lower in the zone, or what are the benefits of that?
Yes, well, one of the things that I learned immediately was that the strike zone has dropped like 18 inches over the last 3 years. And it's truly become a safe haven for pitchers to throw down, get strike one, then play with the corners, elevate a fastball every now and then. So that's been one of the keys to the Royals' success early is jumping on that first pitch fastball where pitchers would usually try to just throw it down there thinking that they can get probably a rollover on some of the major benefits of this, increased batting average, increased slugging, you can elevate the ball easier. If you execute it with consistent success, I mean, your numbers will increase big time.
Yeah.
Homer, there was a second World Series championship that you were not aware of. You won one with me while I was playing with the Mariners on Ken Griffey Jr. Slugfest in 2000. But thank you again for playing second base for me. But, with looking at baseball right now, you came up in the era when, home runs were prevalent. And, now, you look at the Toronto Blue Jays with Donaldson, Bautista, with Encarnacion. Those are big home run hitters. You got Chris Davis. But there's not, 40 home run hitters anymore. It's, a select group that are hitting 40 home runs. How did you make your way in baseball when, the home run was the sexy thing at the time?
It worked for me in the beginning, but just using my speed, playing defense, just trying to get in scoring position so the big guys can drive me in. Well, once Moneyball came along and they started focusing more on base percentage, then guys like myself had no value. As a matter of fact, I was almost too expensive for that model, as I got into my career, deeper into my career. But now they'd love to have a guy like myself who could hit 300 and steal bases. So, it was just timing. But for me, it was definitely speed and defense.
Did you feel like you feel like now with how far it's gone away from bunting, away from giving up outs, that a team, I mean, look at the Royals. They still believe in the bunt with, even when people are, pulling their hair out, when it's like, okay, why are you bunting in this situation? They've been in the World Series back-to-back years. Obviously, there's still room in the game for an occasional bunt here and there. Do you think these teams that are just relying on big innings, inning after inning, are handicapping themselves by not, letting these teams, not having a guy bunt, not having a guy steal, manufacturing runs, just relying on a big inning? Do you think these teams are just handcuffing themselves in these situations?
Absolutely. I think we're kind of seeing that now where the Mets are having a tough time manufacturing runs because, they weren't like hitting mega home runs, but they increased their run production this year due to the extra base hit. So when you can't get the extra base hit, it affects your ability to score runs. But the identity of the Kansas City Royals is such, they can take an opportunity to try to bunt, because in the book I talk about how what's happening is, since Moneyball has come along, hitters have gotten themselves into a big hole by trying to walk so much, and that's decreasing their ability to get volumes of base hits. And what they need is they need more hits because, the type of hit would determine how easy you can score a run. Singles are okay, but you really want to increase doubles. Doubles is a lot easier than home runs, but they're second to the easiest form of scoring runs. So, that's another reason why hitting low on the zone is important, because that pitch down there is the easiest pitch to elevate. Because the fastball is so effective, it gets extremely difficult to hit. More effective the higher they go up the ladder, so you can't really rely on that. But to your point, sure, I think it's going to go back to the 80s style of baseball, fast, stolen bases, because teams are no longer getting 1,700 hits and scoring 800, 900 runs.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And now, how do you think that's going to work, at least in terms for the Mets here now? They're obviously going to hold down 0-2. Maybe they had too much time off with the 6 days off, shaking off some of the rust after the first two games. But what are, the key offensive contributors, guys like Cespedes and Wright and Murphy and Granderson? What are they going to be looking to do, at least going up against Yordano Ventura, when his overpowering 96 to 100-mile-an-hour fastball, complemented by great power curve and a changeup with quite a bit of movement on it. What are things they're going to be looking to focus on here to hopefully kind of get this offense back on track?
If I had to take a guess, they've got to leave that fastball alone. I mean, it's cold. They're going to elevate it. I mean, it's not like he's going to be throwing 95, 97 over the heart of the plate. He's going to be looking to hit his spots down the way. They've got to really settle on something soft to be effective against Yordano. The thing that is very telling to me was the Mets. They were expecting for the Mets to just blow Kansas City away, but man, they're a good fastball hitting team. I sent some data over today that shows where DeGrom left that fastball up, and man, you make it to the major leagues, you better be able to hit a fastball. So I think that's where. They're going to have to pitch backwards like they're doing. And then the one key that I noticed against Daniel Murphy was that from the data I sent over, you see how he had all that production slightly down outside of the strike zone. I think 4 of his 7 home runs were from the knees down. He had like 13 of his 16, 17 hits knees down. But, man, Kansas City went up and in on him, and once he makes that adjustment, then they're going to make another adjustment. So Murphy was the only one they really had to prepare for. So they're just filling their way with the other hitters.
Yeah, no, and that's obvious, too. Go ahead, Bob.
Homer, during your time playing baseball, how many times did you hear it, and how many times did it get annoying when somebody said, you have a great baseball name?
I heard it a lot, and I still hear it.
Looking at the World Series in general, looking with the Mets, I feel like they're three. Yes, Syndergaard, DeGrom, and Harvey are all, that's a great 1-2-3 punch. But I feel like they're too similar. That the Cubs never picked up on, were never able to pick up on it. And, the Mets or the Royals are a team that can kind of pick up on things because they're experienced. You feel like it's kind of it's an advantage for the Mets to have those three great pitchers. But do you feel like it's kind of a disadvantage that they're all they have this, they're pretty similar in how they approach the game?
Sure. I mean, I totally believe that. And I tell you, to give the Royals credit, when I was watching them in San Fran, they looked like young, inexperienced players in the postseason that was just wilding out, having fun, having success. But then when they ran into a more polished team that was experienced in the postseason, it showed a little bit. I'm now seeing that young team become more polished through their experience from last year.
Right.
Their ability to come back is totally due to being able to make the pitcher work, taking tougher pitches. When last year, man, they were swinging at balls in the dirt, swinging at high fastballs. I don't even think the World Series even ended on a high fastball. So now it's like, man, they really have matured, and it's kind of cool to see.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and kind of one of the things that surprises me the most about the Royals too is they're going up there and they're making contact, they're swinging early, they're relatively aggressive in at least their approach at the plate. What allows them? They're so good at hitting the mid to high 90s fastball, even more so than they are at hitting pitches underneath 95 and 96 miles an hour. I would assume that would be more difficult. How are the Royals hitters able to routinely square up these quality pitches from guys, that are throwing at such high rates of speed?
John, that's a great question. To me, what I'm noticing is that they're definitely taking that pitch the other way. And 0-0, 2-0, 3-1, 3-2, you can look fastball. And if you get it, so that fastball, it's only effective when it travels so deep, when it gets too deep up on you. So, they're getting themselves into some pretty good hitters counts. And, all their comebacks this postseason, they've had countless, where it was like 1-2, then they worked the count to 3-2. They got themselves something good to hit and hit up the middle the other way. Last year they would have been swinging out of their shoes trying to pull any and every, the first thing they saw the pitcher's hand. So, just a testament to how they've matured in 1 year.
Yeah, and probably one of the most impressive things for me is you hear a guy like Mike Moustakas where his defense was always great, and everybody always kind of knocked his bat for the longest time, and you saw there was a significant delay in the development of the Royals' young positional core bats. And that was something that needed to happen, and it seemed like something was able to click this year where they're able to spark a rally in a hurry, and now you see a guy like Mike Moustakas. He's leading the team in average when his offense has been criticized since his arrival. Now that he seems to be focusing more on pitches down in the zone, what are some things you think that's helping, Moustakas maybe feel a little bit more comfortable hitting at the major league level and, kind of help maybe raise his winning prospectus a little bit here?
His ability to take the ball the other way as a lefty, extremely important. All the elite hitters, they do it. Tony Gwynn, Derek Jeter, Rod Carew, Frank Thomas, Hank Aaron, you name it. I've studied all these guys' approaches and the more recent players, their data, and all the elite players do the same thing. They're able to hit the ball to the other side of the field, which means they stay on it longer and they let it travel deeper. And I'll tell you one little nugget that goes along with that is you've got to be able to let that ball travel deep. And the fastball is the only pitch you don't have to worry about allowing it to get too deep because it's going to get on you so fast. But you need to get about 60% of your success off of off-speed pitches because that's all you're going to get. Because once you start leaning on that fastball too much, you're going to stop getting it.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's the truth. Yeah, and a couple other
Homer,
things.
looking at
1998. Yeah, go ahead. Go ahead, Bobbo.
Looking in, your career, you played with the '98 Yankees. You guys played the Padres in the World Series. Looking back at the 90, different eras in baseball, it's the one sport where you can really kind of compare teams. Because the bigger, faster, stronger. I mean, it works in baseball, but it doesn't always mean best team. Looking at, over the generations, what was the best team you ever saw while you were playing, and what's the best team that you've ever seen since you've retired?
Since I've retired, I would say, and here's what's crazy, is that the Detroit Tigers teams that made the postseason but didn't, just couldn't get over that hump, man, I thought those guys were like elite. I mean, they were throwing 1,500, almost 1,600 hits out there when the closest to them was probably 1,450. And as you can imagine, they were getting like 1,000 hits down the zone, which that's repetitive mechanics over and over. They had high-end pitching. I really thought that, 3 or 4 years ago, that Detroit Tigers team should have won a championship.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And you look at having a guy like Jim Leland, that was coaching that team, and man, you've played for so many amazing managers between Joe Torre, Jim Fregosi, Buck Martinez, Jeff Torborg. What are some of the things that or maybe one of the things that would stick out the most that you've kind of learned from them and try to pass along?
The one thing they all had in common, they all were old school. So I never really got the young managers a manager who had played fairly recently. So, it was just all about business. It was like they had kind of like a fatherly figure element to it. It was like you almost wanted to do well for these guys because, all they wanted to do was win.
Pops.
yeah. I'll tell you something else they taught me, and that is sometimes you just have to make tough decisions. Give you an example. In '98, when we had a successful regular season, but Joe Torre had to make the decision to play some young guys in the postseason who hadn't really proven themselves, but he thought it was best for the team, and that takes a lot of heart to do. That's a tough decision to make because if the young player doesn't come through for you, your job can be on the line. And plus, at some point, they all released me during my career too. So hey, we like you, but you're just not playing.
Right. Yeah.
Homer, what was the most uncomfortable question you were ever asked by a media member, other than this one, throughout your career? And what was the one question that you blew up on? Did you ever blow up on a reporter when they asked you a question?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, I knew exactly what they were going to ask because if you had a good game, they want to know about, why did you have, the success. If you had a bad game, they want to know what you were thinking. I always had a great relationship with the media. I will say, man, I promise you, I can't think of anything where someone got sideways with me. But I'll tell you one thing I can tell you, and I've had my story twisted around on me a couple times. It was like first 4 year playing every day, and it was like, hey, Homer, you tired? And I was like, yeah, a little bit, but hey, man, I'm gonna get my second win and looking to finish up strong. Next day in the paper, Homer Bush is tired.
Yeah, that's how they're gonna play that, of course.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this, because I know just talking to you about your whole idea and your approach towards hitting here with hitting low in the zone. I know I'm gonna be picking this up honestly. I still run a baseball team. I still play baseball, and this is something I'm gonna be passing around to everybody. Tell everybody where we can pick up hitting low in the zone.
Actually, the easiest place is hittinglowinthezone.com. But you can get it off Amazon. You can go to my website, homerbushbaseball.org. It's on Kindle. It's so you can get an ebook form, and it's doing extremely well. It's getting a new conversation about hitting going, because the perception that you make a living hitting elevated strikes is the furthest thing from the truth.
Yeah, that's great. Well, again, we can check you out on Twitter at Bush Homer, and check it out. You have your own Facebook page doing stuff with that, and I absolutely appreciate you coming on. What great perspective, and hopefully we can have you back on here soon, huh, Homer?
I'd love to. I appreciate the time.
You got it. Absolutely. Have a great night, Homer.
All right, now, John. Bye.
Thank you much. And there he is. That's Homer Bush, 1998 World Series champion. At Bush Homer. You need to check out that book. Obviously, you can hear, he knows what he's talking about in terms of hitting low in the zone. And it's honestly, it's a great approach for me, because I know it worked for me for a while, and it was one of those things where it was a part of my game, but it wasn't something that I focused on incredibly. And I hope none of my opponents are listening, but I'm going to get my hands on that book and definitely kind of focus on that a little bit, because it sounds like a great idea. But when we come back, great idea. You have any of your fantasy questions? We got our guy Jim Sarantias coming on the line, the Fantasy Greek of thefantasygreek.com. Give us a call, 585-633-7487. Hashtag any of your questions. Ask TFG. We'll get to it, like his page on Facebook, on Twitter, all those places. So we do stuff. And later on, Mr. Greg Renoff, he's going to talk to us about Van Halen Rising, how a Southern backyard party band saved metal. And David Lee Roth is amazing. So we're going to get into that when we come back right here on the Johnny Bobbo Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Welcome back into the Johnny Bobbo Show on Late Night Sports Radio on your Spreaker app and also downloadable on iTunes. And speaking of heroes, we're going to bring in our fantasy hero, Mr. Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek of thefantasygreek.com. How are you this evening, sir?
I'm doing great, and that was the absolutely most coolest. I know that doesn't work in the English language, but the absolutely most coolest lead-in for me that I've ever had. Which begs the question, Keith, why don't we have such cool music on your podcast? Why is it always this show that has the cool music?
See?
Well, I actually used it as a rejoin last night when we came back from break, but that's
It's because John's thirsty.
John's?
I can't help it. I'm the music guy, and I complain to Keith. Anytime I hear a song I don't like, there's this one with the violins.
Yeah.
Oh, I hate that damn song.
What with the violins? What's that?
It's like it's like a really screechy.
Oh
and
no,
pitchy. I hate that.
No, I know what you're talking
Like a rap
about.
song or something.
Yeah, it's remember the name.
Yeah, it's garbage is what it
It's
is.
not
I hate
garbage.
the fucking song. Anyways, so we're talking about waiver wires, and you got the bye week going on. People need a quarterback, and you got a guy like Teddy Bridgewater who might be available of the Vikings at the Bears. Went through a slow start, in his second season as a pro, but seems like he's been turning it on. At least 249 yards passing in 3 straight games and 316 yards on 2 touchdowns in Week 7. Considering the Bears secondary has given up 15 passing touchdowns this season, Teddy Bridgewater is a pretty good bet. I mean, at least how about even as a value pick in some of these weekly fantasy leagues?
That's a different beast, and
Oh, totally.
I suppose he's a value. To me, you want to pick a quarterback that has a genuine shot at 3 TDs in a daily fantasy game.
Okay.
And I'm not so sure that he's genuinely got that. I mean, I guess he's got that shot. You look at his body of work, and I mean, he's a 1 to 2 TD guy, and 2 TDs, that's a good game for him.
Right.
Anything more than that is really sort of, I don't know, unforeseen. It happens, and it's a bonus. So in a daily fantasy league, I guess he's a value, but I think there's different quarterbacks you could go with, and I could give you several if you want to look at them for daily fantasy.
Right. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. Well, at the top of the list is going to be the Giants' Eli Manning going up against the Saints team, giving up 275 yards passing per game and 14 TDs on the season, 3rd most in the NFL. I mean, these guys, in terms of fantasy, are giving up the most fantasy points allowed. The Saints, that is, their opponent. And, I mean, that immediately indicates, he's due for a big game. If you look at his last 2 games against a couple of decent defenses, he struggled. Prior to that, I think he was putting up 200 to 300 yards a game, 2 to 3 TDs a game. You take him and you stack him with Odell Beckham Jr., who should really kick some butt. Can I say ass on this show?
Yeah, say ass all you want.
All right. Should really kick some ass. That to me is a great stackable pair. You can look at Phillip Rivers and Keenan Allen against the Ravens. I really like the matchup, and the Ravens are giving up the 2nd most fantasy points. And what that equates to in really hard numbers is 283 yards, which is the 5th most in the NFL, and 13 TDs on the season, which is the 4th most in the NFL. So that's another sort of, to me, and I would call them both value because, the guys that when you go onto these fantasy league sites, I mean, they're not going to sit there and tell you that Aaron Rodgers, is the 10th ranked quarterback for the week, they're going to have him in the top 2 or 3.
Right.
And probably put the most salary on them. So, to me, these are two really, really great value quarterback, wide receiver tandems, or in daily fantasy sports stacks that you could really go with.
Yeah, and now, kind of one of the bigger headlines here, Arian Foster.
And by the way, if anybody out there wins, I want to cut. That's all I'm saying.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Welcome to the Cafe 80s, where it's...
What was that?
I was trying to find a Back to the Future soundboard because you're like, can I say ass on it? And I wanted to find the Back to the Future line where Marty McFly tells George, yes, goddamn it, George, swear.
Well, I figured you guys have used worse language on this show, but whenever, my little bit is, nobody says anything, so I just thought I'd ask.
No, because you're the one that has the genuine thoughts. We need to take advantage of that and do the best we can with the time that we got. So,
okay.
Well, how about a guy like Arian Foster, man? He tore his Achilles tendon, ending his season, potentially his career. Knowing he's turning 30, already was contemplating retirement going into this year. What does this mean for fantasy owners? Are they better off going with a guy like Alfred Blue or Chris Polk? In the return of the running back community to Houston here, going up against a who are they playing? They're playing the Dolphins.
Titans. No, they're playing the Titans.
Titans, yeah.
Well, in terms of the matchup in general, it's definitely not the easiest. Titans are only giving up close to 16 fantasy points on the ground to 2 running backs, quarterback, whatever, which is top 10. So it's not the greatest of matchups this weekend. So even if Alfred Blue rolls out there and doesn't have a great game, it doesn't mean. And a great game and not a great game could just be 100 yards rushing. I mean, these days people want so much more. So I don't know that this weekend will be the greatest of tests, but for now he's the running back to have. Just looking at the touch distribution, the productivity, you can't say that Chris Polk has pulled away. He certainly had more touches when Arian Foster played these last couple of weeks, but that doesn't necessarily mean anything. It's no longer true that the backup gets the third down passing downs or gets the work when the lead running back wants to take a break. In essence, the backup, in many instances, on many teams, sits out and just doesn't play unless that lead running back gets hurt. And the one thing that Alfred Blue has going for himself, if Bill O'Brien can be patient, is he had the best game amongst running backs, or between him and Chris Polk. I want to say it was week 2, week 3, put up about 129 yards. It was a real impressive game, but he had 25 carries. So he's a running back that it might take him 15 or more touches to really get going, to lather himself up, if you will. And
I don't feel comfortable here anymore.
Well, it's making me wonder. I hated saying that because I didn't want to make Bobbo uncomfortable. But
it takes a lot more than that.
Does?
Yeah.
Well, because he's lathering up, I'm assuming.
Yeah.
No, I wasn't lathering up. I was lotioning up, guys.
Yeah, there we go.
All right.
Very different. Very different.
You're a modern man. You're a modern man.
Yeah, I'm a lotion and Kleenex type of guy.
There you go. So Alfred Blue's the guy to have. I just don't know that this weekend will be the best performance he should have, and one that'll make you go, oh yeah, this was this. It's sort of like Cherkandrick West, 2 weeks ago. 10 touches he didn't do anything with. Last week they let him carry the ball like he was the lead running back, and he just blew it up. So
I feel like,
we'll have to see.
Jim, I feel like you're struggling after getting the image out of your mind of me with lotion and clean it.
I have no image of you in my mind because we've never met, and that's probably a good thing.
One of these days, we're all going to get together. We're going to have a fun show party. It's going to be awesome. I think. I
will say, Bobbo's voice is very similar to somebody I knew. I don't know, 20 years ago, and so I have transposed that person's image onto Bobbo, and because of that, it does make me feel a little bit uncomfortable now that we are talking about it.
Well, you're real.
Well, how about feeling uncomfortable? there's the guy Jonathan Stewart. We were talking about cutting earlier in the year, and just an awful season he's having, and it seems like he's running with a purpose lately. 2 touchdowns week 6, then 125 yards on 24 carries in week 7. Now that Stewart finally looks healthy, is this a good start? For him this week, going up against a Colt unit that's allowed on average 122.7 yards a game rushing wise.
Yes, absolutely. You have Jonathan Stewart. You make sure you get him in as your RB2 because besides the 122 yards rushing, they're allowing 8 TDs on the ground on the season, which means he's pretty much guaranteed one as long as the Panthers stick to their game plan of the last 2 games, which is to feed him the football. I mean, prior to that time, he hadn't done squat. I mean, it looked like, he was an afterthought in this offense, and based on their record, there was no reason for them to turn to him. Now it looks like they're dedicated to him. He's still an injury risk. He's got that baggage with him. But, for now, you start the guy, and if he gets hurt, well, we'll see what they do, whether they go to Cameron Artis-Payne or to Mike Tolbert.
Yeah, and here's a little bit more complicated question, wrapping up our waiver wire here. Wide receiver Nate Washington of the Texans, and they were forced to shift their game plan to the air week 7, leading Washington, to throw the ball his way 16 times for 9 receptions, 127 yards, and 2 touchdowns. As can be expected, pretty popular target on the waiver wire this week. But knowing that he's going up against one of the best secondaries in the league, would it be smart to sit him week 8, and kind of let him get back in the starting lineup going forward after the bye week in Cincinnati, week 10?
That's a really great question. Well, I suppose there's 2 lines of thinking on that. One is looking at the matchup straight up. The Titans are one of the better pass defenses in the league. However, they are still giving up to the wide receiver position roughly 21 fantasy points, and that's in standard scoring, which puts them right in the middle of the pack of all teams.
Okay.
So, there's 2 ways to look at it. DeAndre Hopkins is the wide receiver to have on the Texans. He's the wide receiver to start. He should be getting a majority of the touches. Last week was sort of an anomaly. And the only real reason for Nate Washington to get active is if DeAndre Hopkins starts getting shut down again, the team, switches their focus to throwing the football to him. I think I have him. I have to double check my rankings, but sort of a low end wide receiver 3. He's not the greatest of starts, but here, the week in terms of right now, it's the bye weeks that are affecting sort of the pool of players that are out there, and this week we've got the Bills. We don't have to worry about any of the receivers there really. Jacksonville, they have 2 receivers that are no longer available. The Eagles, I suppose Jordan Matthews, but he hasn't done much. And then the Redskins, Pierre Garçon. So there should be plenty of people out there. You don't have to rely on him. But he's an option, just a very low-end, very risky sort of option.
Yeah, and now moving on to, we got a handful of hashtag AskTFG questions that came in through Facebook, Twitter, quite a few through text as well, all from the Midwest because the Midwest loves their football. All right, wide receiver, Stephon Diggs, Vikings at the Bears, or Mr. Jeremy Maclin of the Chiefs against the Detroit Lions. That's from Russ Marquette, Michigan.
Wow, that's a really great. I think you've got to go with Stephon Diggs in this particular instance, and the reason being is that the Bears, they give up a nice chunk of TDs, and whereas the Lions, while a good defense to put your wide receiver up against, through the combination of Alex Smith and the amount of TDs that the Lions are giving up, there's always this risk that Maclin gets shut out of a score, but he gets a bunch of yards. I have Jeremy Maclin as a must-start this week, but I also have Stephon Diggs as a must-start this week. You can't go wrong with either, but I would stick with Stephon Diggs. He's the real deal.
Oh, yeah, absolutely, and in a hurry, too. But,
he's got the quarterback that'll throw the football to him. So let's just start right there.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. Now we're going out to birthday boy Aaron in Southgate, Michigan. Wide receiver matchup, Emmanuel Sanders of the Broncos going up against the Packers at home, or Anquan Bolden of the 49ers at the Rams.
Oh, you start Emmanuel Sanders and you bench Anquan Bolden. Run away from Anquan as fast as you can. Here, the history of the 49ers and specifically Anquan Bolden against the Rams is last year, he actually had 2 really good games, 90 yards receiving, 1 TD. The problem is this year, everything's different. Colin Kaepernick is just absolutely awful against any team on this planet that can defend the pass, and more in particular, can put pressure on him. So the Rams are number 1 in most sacks and number 1 in most quarterback hits. That is just a very terrible formula to put it up against Colin Kaepernick and then expect him to hit Anquan Bolden for 90 yards and a score. Yeah, could it happen? I guess, but I could think of so many other wide receivers I would rather play ahead of Anquan Bolden. I would just bench him and avoid him. And since you have Emmanuel Sanders, both Aaron Rodgers and Peyton Manning are fully capable of throwing 2 TDs this weekend. They're both fully capable of throwing 250 yards this weekend. And the Packers are going to spend quite a bit of time shutting down Demaryius Thomas. And to me, Emmanuel Sanders is the natural beneficiary of that. And I wouldn't be surprised if he gets 2 TDs this weekend.
You got it. And again, we're talking to Jim Sarantias, the Fantasy Greek of thefantasygreek.com. Find him on Twitter at @thefantasygreek. And that's where these questions are coming from. Hashtag your questions, ask TFG. Moving on to the running back situation from Noah in Bartlett, Illinois. Chris Ivory of the Jets at the Raiders, or Jonathan Stewart of the Panthers against the Colts. So we were talking a little bit earlier there, Jonathan Stewart, No.
I'm just, I'm just referring to some of my numbers here.
Yeah, absolutely.
So Chris Ivory's not a bad play. It's a very middle of the road matchup. The Raiders are giving up, roughly 18 fantasy points to the position, which is very much middle of the road. What's the other option, John?
And Jonathan Stewart of the Panthers against the Colts.
Oh, I would say definitely start Jonathan Stewart. The Colts are giving up the 5th most fantasy points to the position. I mean, those are the 2 guys you got to pick between. Yeah, but ideally, you want to play them both.
Okay.
I mean, I'd love to know who this guy's RB1 is, because to have Chris Ivory, to have Jonathan Stewart, and we're picking between them, I mean, they better have Todd Gurley as their number 1 option.
Now, how about people that are stuck with Carlos Hyde, like myself and like Mike of Chicago, Illinois? Carlos Hyde, 49ers at the Rams, or Theo Riddick of the Lions going up against the Chiefs?
Oh, that's such a terrible choice.
Yeah, tough spot.
Because they're both in bad situations. You've got Theo Riddick in a committee situation. You've got Carlos Hyde in a situation where the 49ers should be struggling passing the ball. And in theory, then, they should be struggling running the ball. Plus, he's all nicked up. So, I mean, I think I've got Hyde ranked ahead of Riddick. And the primary reason is because he should be getting a bunch of touches, where Riddick is going to have to sit there in sort of whatever's left over from Amir Abdullah. And that's assuming anything's left over. I mean, the way that game is projecting, it's going to be a high-scoring game with a lot of passing. So, Keith, what's your favorite expression?
It's like trying to pick which puddle of vomit to lick.
The puddle that I would lick is Hyde.
I would say it's like Sophie's Choice. How horrible it would have to be.
Yeah, that would be
bad. The whole thing is bad.
Yeah. All right. Well, how about maybe we can shed some light on the situation here for our guy Ryan in Chicago, Illinois. Tight end Larry Donnell of the Giants going up against the Saints, or Gary Barnidge of the Cleveland Browns going up at home against the Cardinals.
I got to go with Barnidge, and the reason being is so far he's been matchup proof. I mean, he has put up the yards and he's put up the scores, and it doesn't matter who he's playing against. I do like Donnell, but I like him as a player when you're looking at your number 1 guy going, this is a really, really bad matchup, and plus my number 1 guy doesn't have the talent to sort of barrel through it. If I didn't have Barnidge, for example, Donnell right now would certainly be a better play than Crockett Gilmore, because the Saints gave up a bunch of fantasy points to the tight end position. And I could see Donnell. Here's how Donnell's numbers should pan out. 30, 40 yards and a score. And that score is crucial as to whether or not he will be fantasy worthy. To me,
Yeah.
Barnage is almost guaranteed, 80 to 100 yards, and then the score, I suppose maybe he won't score, but I'm expecting him to score because he's just been that good. Donnell will be ahead of Crockett Gilmore, Ben Watson, Jordan Cameron, Kyle Rudolph, Jacob Tammy, Owen Daniels, Richard Rogers, Clive Walford, Dwayne Allen, to name a couple other guys. So I like him ahead of those people, but I just wouldn't. I would still go with Gary Barnage.
Okay, and we kind of got into Peyton Manning a little bit earlier. We're going to move into our stardom situms. Peyton Manning of the Broncos going up against the Packers. The Packers defense has actually more interceptions at 8 than they do touchdowns passing wise, which are 7. Seems like a pretty bad matchup for Manning. Is he worth sitting this week, assuming the Packers are going to be able to contain him?
Well, you can't assume anything. The point is he is certainly a candidate for 1 touchdown. No question is.
Okay. The
question is, does he get to 2? And can he get to 2? And the answer to that is sure, absolutely. But we all know that the Packers have a very good defense. You could say the same thing going against Aaron Rodgers. The Broncos have a very good defense. Right now I have Peyton Manning ranked at number 12, and I have several quarterbacks ranked ahead of him that I would play based on the matchups. I'd play Matt Stafford ahead of him. I'd play his brother Eli Manning ahead of him. I had Ryan Tannehill, who's up tonight, not having a very good game. I would have played him ahead of him. Matt Ryan ahead of him. Phillip Rivers, Carson. You could find this all on the fantasygreek.com in our rankings. So there are other quarterbacks I would go with. So, Peyton Manning is startable. He's a low-end QB1 in a 12-team league. And I wouldn't fear it because, the one thing that's in his favor is they've had 2 weeks to prepare for this game. And the obvious problem with Peyton Manning and the obvious problem with the running game is the offensive line. The offensive line can't open up the holes to get these running backs going, and the offensive line can't pass protect Peyton Manning, which is putting him under duress, which is making him throw some terrible passes. And all you have to do is look at the number of sacks they've given up and the number of quarterback hits. Just compare them to the last season and the season before, and you will see glaringly that at this point in the season, the halfway point, they've given up as many sacks and as many quarterback hits as they did all of 2014 and all of 2013. So if they've taken these 2 weeks and fixed these problems, Peyton Manning could actually have a pretty good game. If they haven't, we could see more of the same. But I would say that they're in a better place than they were 2 weeks ago.
Yeah. And now how about a guy like Latavius Murray, running back of the Raiders, going up at home against the Jets? He's been pretty easy to predict this season, at least in terms of faltering against some more stout defenses and then, shining against, in some of his favorable matchups. Lining up opposite the Jets defense, who's allowed 71.5 rushing yards a game. Is this the week that you're going to sit Murray?
Sit him. Don't even hesitate. Just sit him. Even if something strange happens and he suddenly has this great game, don't even kick yourself for it. The Jets are number 1 in pass yards or rushing yards allowed at 71 and tied number 1 in terms of TDs on the season, rush TDs at just 2. And I would argue that Marcel Reese is a better play than Latavius Murray right now this week. So, just avoid him.
All right, well, how about running back Isaiah Crowell, of the Cleveland Browns going up against the Cardinals at home, but running back committee with Duke Johnson and Robert Turbin. It seems like each week his role keeps diminishing. With the odds stacked against him, week 8, going up against Cardinals' 12th ranked run defense, should fantasy owners sit Crowell or just outright cut him at this point?
Well, I think you probably should sit him, and you could outright cut him if there was a better player that you needed. The problem with cutting him is he's still one of these players. The biggest commodity in this fantasy season are running backs. And unless they're god-awful, it's hard to let them go because they could turn it around. They could have a decent game. They could do certain things. The problem with Crowell is he's on the team with Duke Johnson, so Duke Johnson is going to cap his production, especially in the passing game. I'm looking at his stats right now, and the best games he had was against Tennessee, where he scored and had 70 yards rushing. The Ravens, where he had just about 50 yards rushing, 38 yards receiving, and his score. And against San Diego, where he had 63 yards rushing and 62 yards receiving. So against a team like Arizona, it's a little bit harder to tell that he'll be able to produce like that. He could be more of the 30 and 30 sort of running back, which is, unless you're short, I mean, he's a player to bench. Outright cutting him, I might wait. I mean, it's, again, unless there's somebody else on the waiver wire you absolutely need, and Crowell's just taking space on your bench, then I would wait. I mean, we've got 8 weeks. Johnson can get hurt. The coaching staff could view how they use their running backs in a different light, but I would hang on to them.
You got it. That's our guy, Jim Sarantias of Fantasy Greek, otherfantasygreek.com. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your Skybox subscription? Because tell people what kind of things they can find or what kind of trinkets you got available.
Well, there's lots of trinkets. If you can get to the Fantasy Greek right now, I actually put up an article out there on how best to use our Skybox. It was really intended for the current Skybox members, but it's available for everyone to see. It's really a process, and it's a system. And the system starts on Tuesdays when we publish our Fantasy Points Allowed, which is only viewable by Skybox members in the private portion of our site. Basically tells you how many fantasy points every defense gives up to every single position player out there, and it helps you sort of look at your roster and make an early decision on which way to lean, play them or sit them. Later in the day, we come out with our first looks and sits, which is our own quick analysis on who to start, who to sit, and where there might be some issues. Then we come out with our game previews. We do come with our game previews. Specifically, we start on Wednesday night with the analysis of the Thursday night football game. And the previews, there's 256 of them on the season. They're all magazine quality. They don't just say start, sit, start, sit. They say start so-and-so, and here's why. Bench so-and-so, and here's why. Hey, you probably should play this guy, but understand this, but still play him because here's why. So all those times where, I get somebody on Twitter saying, well, who would you play? And you tell them, and they're like, well, why? And I'm like, why? I've got 140 characters to explain to you why? I mean, it's not necessarily that simple. So we give you that stuff all right up front. And then we also have Set My Lineup, Ask the Fantasy Greek. And basically you just send us who's on your team, tell us, I need to fill a quarterback, 2 running backs, 2 wide receivers, tight end, flex, and we'll send back what we think is the optimal lineup to have. Sometimes it's real simple. You just set it. Sometimes you say, I picked so-and-so over so-and-so because of this and this reason. Or, hey, if you've got somebody better on the waiver wire, like so-and-so, maybe you want to get them and drop so-and-so and, plug them into your lineup. But that's something that if you have somebody going on the Thursday night game, send it to us on Wednesday. If you don't have anybody going on the Thursday night game, just get it to us by 5 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, and we will get it back to you on Saturday. Then, through Skybox, we do things like our winners table for if you have, pick'em games, and then update the game previews all the way through early Saturday afternoon. And all this for under $20. And all this for under $20, which I don't know a single magazine subscription that's under $75. So if you can't afford $20, you have more problems than you probably need discussing, and you probably shouldn't be playing fantasy football.
Yeah, you got better things to do, like figure out how to make some more damn money.
Wow.
Well, that's our guy, Jim Sarantias.
Wait! Before he goes.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
It's one of Keith's roster questions.
Yeah, because you don't answer my text messages.
Oh, I didn't. You texted me?
I did. But that's okay. It's just me. I understand. I ask too much of your time. I understand. Darren McFadden or Melvin Gordon or Charkandrick West for my second running back spot.
Oh, my God. You start Charkandrick West. I think I've got him at number 12. You need to start this kid. He's, besides what he did last weekend, I mean, just look at from a matchup perspective. They're going up against a Lions team that's given up the 9th most fantasy points. That's roughly 22 in a standard scoring system, non-PPR. Darren McFadden's going up against a defense that's allowed the 2nd least fantasy points. And who's your other guy?
It's for my last running back spot because I have Le'Veon Bell in the other one. So it's either Charkandrick West, Melvin Gordon, or Darren McFadden.
Well, right. So I already explained why you don't play Darren McFadden given this pool of players, and you don't start Melvin Gordon because, we don't know what the Chargers are doing with him. I mean, if he's just going to get 8 touches, even though the matchup is actually, I would say, favorable to very favorable, I mean, why would you risk it?
Yeah.
I'd hang on to him until the coaching staff there really gets a change of attitude, which they may soon if they don't start winning some football games.
Okay.
All right, there you go. And you finally got it in there. Everybody's happy for you, Keith, and at least you got a response here from Jim.
Don't feign your enthusiasm.
Oh, and let me just throw in Kendall Wright, Keith. Kendall Wright.
Oh, okay, for my wife. Thanks, appreciate it. Well, it was between Devontae Parker or Kendall Wright, and she left Devontae Parker in the starting lineup anyway.
Oh my God, why?
So she's locked. Because this is what happens when it's 7:52 and she all of a sudden decides to check her lineup.
No, but I mean, what has Devontae Parker done lately for anybody?
Yeah, what has Kendall Wright done lately for anybody?
Well, yeah, but he's had some good games. There's a decent enough matchup. Actually, it's a very favorable matchup. The Texans are giving up the 11th most fantasy points to opposing wide receivers. That's roughly 25 in non-PPR. So probably in PPR, I'm going to guess here more like 37. So he's a candidate for 10 to 15 fantasy points in a PPR setting for sure.
Okay.
So
all right, well there it is. So we're talking to our guy Jim Sarantias of thefantasygreek.com at thefantasygreek. Check him out. Get your Skybox subscription. Hashtag all your questions. Ask TFG, and Jim's going to take care of it for you. But what we're going to do when we come back, we're going to talk to our guy Greg Renoff. He's going to tell us a little bit about his book Van Halen Rising. Explain how this Southern Backyard Party band saved metal when we get back here on the Johnny Bobbo Show on LateNightSportsRadio.com.
See, I want you till so far away. I know can't walk away from the things you say, the things you say. Yeah, the price you pay, the price you pay for love. Can't walk away, can't walk away.
Who the hell can wait till morning? Talk now at latenightsportsradio.com.
Go on LateNightSportsRadio.com. We're on your Spreaker app, on iTunes, and you're listening to the Johnny Bobbo Show. We're just coming back. I got done talking to Jim Sarantias, the Fancy Greek. Fixed some stuff for you. We talked to a World Series champion, Mr. Homer Bush, earlier in the show, and now we're going to get real with you. Greg Renoff, author of Van Halen Rising, how a Southern backyard party band saved metal. Mr. Greg, how are you this evening, sir?
Hey, great. Thanks for having me on, guys.
Oh, thanks for coming on this weird show, man. You know, we appreciate it. And I mean, you know, I'm going to start you off with an easy one. You know, it's, you know, we're going to kind of delve into how you got into this whole situation and going through some of the cool stories you came across. One of them that I thought was pretty interesting, and I kind of teased it on some social media websites there, was Gene Simmons tried to get Van Halen signed to a record deal in their early days. It was like 76 or something, I believe, and apparently couldn't make it happen. What was the whole story behind that? How much you know about that whole situation?
Yes, I have a whole chapter in Van Halen Rising about that whole episode. So what ends up happening is that Gene, at the time, 1976, is the summertime. He's in LA on a break with Kiss, and you know, he's living the dream. He's in the biggest band in the world. Kiss is absolutely the talk of every single kid in America, and Gene has a dream, I think, of wanting to basically be a mogul of his own little label. And so if you imagine that the Beatles had Apple as a label, and so Gene probably thinks, why can't Kiss have its own little pet label?
Right.
And so Gene's in LA, and he comes across talk about this band called Van Halen. And he goes up and sees Van Halen in a club in Hollywood, and he really likes them. He sees, I think, the talent that we all know was there, and takes him in the studio and makes a demo recording with Van Halen, basically put some of their songs on tape, Running with the Devil, House of Pain, some of the other songs that ended up becoming big Van Halen hits later. And so what ends up happening is that Gene wants to try to get these guys a record deal, and he brings them to New York from L.A. to have a meeting with his manager, who's named Bill Aucoin. And Bill Aucoin is the guy, again, the kind of the mastermind behind Kiss's business affairs and all that. And so what ends up happening is that after Aucoin sees these guys perform in a little audition and listens to their tape, he turns them down, which is sort of this, in retrospect, one of the biggest mistakes in rock history. Bill Aucoin famously says to Van Halen, you guys have no commercial potential, meaning that you guys are never going to sell any records, and kind of sends them packing. Gene disagreed with the decision. Obviously, Gene wanted them to be signed and wanted to make them into a successful band. And yeah, it's interesting because a few months later they end up on Warner Brothers Records, and then a year later those guys are rock stars in the making. And it's kind of the irony there that Gene Simmons in 1976 couldn't get these guys a record deal, but of course, just a year or so later they're world famous.
Yeah, what a trip. And how long did it take you to go through the interview process of getting all these interviews down? I'm sure probably some of them are done by email, but in other different ways, but probably a lot of face-to-face stuff. How long did it take you to collect all these interviews, kind of, go through them all, filter them all out, and kind of put this thing together?
Yeah, I really started working on the book in 2009, and then kind of built up steam along the way. So I ended up doing about 230 interviews. Most of them were done over the phone. Probably 85% of them were done on the phone. I did some in person out in California. I live in Tulsa, and I made a couple trips out to LA and did some interviews there. And then, as you said, some by email. But yeah, it definitely was a long process in that way. But I really wanted to make sure the book was comprehensive and told the story I wanted to tell, which was how did Van Halen become Van Halen.
And who was the most interesting character that you met throughout that entire process?
That's a really hard question to answer. One guy I ended up talking to was a guy by the name of Kim Fowley, who you guys might know that name because Kim Fowley was the manager of a band called the Runaways. And most recently, Kim Fowley sort of got his name back in the news in sort of an unfortunate way because he was apparently let's just say, not quite a gentleman when it came to the way he treated some of the girls in the band, and was accused, in fact, of rape by one of the women in the band. And so, he was not a particularly nice man. I will tell you, I don't like to speak ill about the dead, but I can tell you that when I spoke to him on the phone, he was not exactly, let's say, kind and gentle with me, and was pretty much a dick right out of the gate. And then, says, I only have about 10 minutes to talk to you, and then 45 minutes later, I haven't gotten a word in edgewise, and then he says he's got to go. So that's kind of how it went. But, probably Kim Fowley was the most memorable interview I did.
Yeah.
Greg, looking at over your research of the band, who had the biggest ego, in your opinion, when the band started? And then who had the biggest or the least amount of the ego now that they've gotten back together with, minus Michael Anthony, but they've gotten back together with David Roth. Who do you think has the least ego now?
Yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, I think that for now, I think that Eddie seems to be. I'm not sure if Eddie has the smallest ego in the band, but he seems to be in a pretty good place. I mean, maybe the best place he's been in 20 years. He's definitely sober. I think that's clear by everyone who's seen him perform this tour. He seems to be happy playing with his kid, and just seems to be comfortable in his own skin in a way that he hadn't been in the past. Eddie Van Halen's drug and alcohol issues are kind of common knowledge, and he certainly was a shy guy growing up and was thrust into the spotlight and wanted to be a musician, but probably didn't want to be a rock star in the same sort of way that we all imagine rock stardom with all the attention and everything. He's just a kind of an introvert, and it seems now he's definitely in a place where he can maybe enjoy it without letting it be something that consumes him in the way it did in the past. So, but from the get-go, Roth certainly had a big ego. I mean, even before Roth was anybody, when he was in high school, he certainly thought well of himself and was confident, and that's definitely what David Lee Roth brought to the table, was a confidence.
Wow, that's awesome.
What do you think?
Go ahead.
What do you think the biggest apology, or I guess the biggest wrong that Eddie had to admit to, or do you think he's admitted that he's made mistakes? Do you think he's admitted to anything?
I don't know. I mean, I think for me, one of the hardest things, and I think a lot of Van Halen fans feel the same way, is that the treatment of Mike Anthony has been kind of hard to swallow. I mean, putting aside the fact that certainly understood that Eddie wants to play music with his kid, anyone would understand that as a parent. I think that the way Mike has been treated and being, exiting from the band and sort of being forced out, and then not being spoken exactly well of in the last few years has been kind of tough to swallow. I'd like to see. I think a lot of people would like to see that part of the Van Halen soap opera kind of come to a happier ending where Eddie could maybe make amends on that piece.
Yeah, and we're talking to Greg Renoff. You can find him on Twitter at Greg Renoff. You can also find him on Facebook. Wrote Van Halen Rising, how a Southern Backyard Party Band saved metal. And, you're in our music segment here, and that means our guy Cody Van Cure is around. Cody, let's bring you on here, buddy. You got a couple questions for Greg?
Hey, Greg. So I've done some research on you, and I'm just wondering, so you were a history teacher before you wrote this book, correct?
Yeah, I was actually a history teacher while I was writing it, and then very recently departed from being a college professor. But yeah.
So how do you go from being a history teacher to just becoming like a huge Van Halen buff? Like, was Van Halen always something like you wanted to like have a passion for? And like, we all have these bands where we love them, and like, was it like a natural progression for you, like knowing so much about history, and then you're like, oh, this is a band I really love, and it just progressed to that? Or how did you come to write the book?
Yeah, so I grew up in New Jersey, and in the spring of 1984, Van Halen was on MTV, and that's when I really first remember encountering Van Halen for sure as a teenager. Again, I was like about 14, and ended up scalping a ticket at school from a kid in my class, and ended up going to see Van Halen their 1984 tour, and man, that was it. I just became this biggest fan of Van Halen. Loved the show, loved the songs I heard, and had the record, and then bought all the other records, and just became a obsessed Van Halen fan. And it just turned out that I obviously stayed a fan all these years, and I always thought when I read books about Van Halen after I became a professor, I just felt that the early years, their beginnings, and how they got their start, and the backyard parties, and the wet T-shirt contest, and the dance contests, and the Gene Simmons stuff that was never really fully fleshed out in some of these other books. And so, I just had the time and the wherewithal to start to research this, and then realized there was a really good story that needed to be told, and away I went. And so that's how it ended up being that a history professor wrote a book about Van Halen.
That's so awesome, dude. All right, so I got this other question for you. So been reading some interviews with Eddie Van Halen. Every interview I've read so far, they refer to him as Ed Van Halen. And in the same interviews, as we already talked about, he's bashing Michael and saying, he taught him every part in the song. He never came up with his own parts. Do you think, there will be a happy ending like what you said, where we could finally get, the original members ever back together, or no?
It's funny, Cody, you say that, because it's one of these things that, if you had asked me 10 years ago, will they ever reunite with David Lee Roth, right? It's 2004, I would have said they're never going to reunite with them. There's just too much bad blood. And so you just sort of never say never with this band. I mean, I think the truth of the matter is that for any group, money is the big driver. I think at this point in your career, you're at the end of your career and kind of the twilight, and money's important. And obviously ego and personality matter too, and you have to get along with people. But I think obviously when the checks are on the table and you're looking at the money that can be made, the contract. I mean, so who knows? I think that it seems unlikely to me. And let's face it. I mean, I don't even know if Mike Anthony would want to, kind of throw himself back into that. But again, maybe the dollar signs are right for everyone involved. Yeah, I just, it's in the past. I've always thought X will never happen. Like they'll never reunite with Sammy again after they break up with Sammy. And then 2004, Jamie's back. And they think they'll never get back together with Roth, and Roth's back in the band. So I think there's a possibility, and I think that the other thing to think about, Cody, is that you have a guy in the band, Wolfgang, who is a young kid and has proven himself to be a superior musician. He plays drums, he plays bass, he plays guitar. I know he's working on his own music outside of Van Halen. And so I can imagine at some point that maybe he, wants to step away too, that, thinks, hey, this is my dad's band and I've enjoyed being in it, but, I have other stuff I want to do. I have ambitions of my own, and maybe what ends up happening is that he steps away, and maybe that opens the door for Mike to return.
Yeah,
I also think it's really what you were saying with Wolfgang having his other interests. Wolfgang's super into cooking as well.
Sorry, say it again. I had a little trouble. I couldn't hear you.
Yeah.
Wolfgang is very into cooking, and it sounds like he might want to pursue a career in being a chef with his mother. Oh my, she's the actress.
Oh yeah.
Oh
yeah,
my God.
I think the thing is it's sort of you're 16 years old, you join Van Halen. I can imagine that's a incredibly stressful and amazing thing to be through. And then, but I'm sure he wants to do his own thing. It's like that's
no, exactly. If my dad was a king of rock and roll, and I grew up in the lifestyle that Wolfgang grew up in, I'm pretty sure I would not want to be surrounded with everything, especially with how many addictions Eddie Van Halen went through. I can totally understand how Wolfgang would want to kind of distance himself. It seems like he's appeasing his father right now with being in Van Halen.
Yeah, it's hard. I mean, it's really hard to know the dynamic. I mean, I think it's just, you would think that if your dad came to you and said, I really need you to play bass, or I want you to stay in the band, I mean, what are you going to say? No. I mean, it's probably hard to say no to your dad. But on the other hand, I think the fact that Wolfie put up a post on either Twitter or Instagram saying, I can't wait to work on my new record. And he said that a month and a half ago. To me, that seemed like he was trying to tell everybody, I've got my own music and it's important to me, and I'm not going to just, make my whole life revolve around Van Halen. Maybe that's wrong. I don't know if that's right or wrong, but that seemed to be the way what it is. And yeah, you're right. Maybe he wants to be a chef, and maybe he wants to do other things other than just sort of do this.
He was just on the Food Network a few months ago on his I'm so sorry. What's his mother's name? The actress.
Valerie.
Valerie Bernelli. Yeah, Valerie Bernelli had her own cooking show on Food Network, and he was on it, and he was talking so much about how he loves to cook, and I think it'd be really cool if he explored passions outside of music, and did not, follow in his father's footsteps and did what he actually wanted to do.
Yeah,
that's fine. But let's kind of get to this book here for a little bit. It feels to me like that the genesis of at least a big chunk of what you did here was kind of clarifying the fact that they weren't just some overnight sensation like a lot of people kind of thought, just knowing that they jumped in with that one mega record. And you you kind of clear up the, all the talk about, it was a lot with David Lee Roth. His dad had some money. Maybe that was a reason why they got big. What was it really that shot them through the roof and turned them into, the seemingly overnight sensation that they became?
Yeah, I mean, I think there's just so many different ingredients there. I mean, I think the ultimate thing that got them noticed in Los Angeles was, first and foremost, Eddie's guitar playing. He's such an amazing guitar player, and even when he was, not known outside of Los Angeles, anyone who saw him play on a regular basis in the backyards or later in clubs, saw that this guy, I mean, Gene Simmons, right? He sees it. He sees how great Eddie is, and wants to put him in a position where they can do a record deal. But you got to give Roth a lot of credit too. There was a good band on the whole, but Roth also was a guy who knew how to, I think, maximize his talents, and also was a tremendous self-promoter of the band, a promoter of the band. I mean, Roth was the guy who, was the extrovert. He was the guy who knew how to get the girls to show up and to really to make the band have that broad appeal. And so, and then they ended up meeting a guy by the name of Ted Templeman. Ted Templeman is a record producer who's the guy who takes them into the studio and records them for Warner Brothers Records. And Ted's the guy who really, I think, saw the ingredients there to the David Lee Roth screams, the yells, to sort of make Dave sound great on record. And then, of course, he knew how to capture Eddie's brilliance on record too. And you have those two things together, and that's what gives you Van Halen.
Yeah, and kind of going back to like some of like talking about how they played like a lot of backyard parties and stuff like that for such a significant period of time. When David Lee Roth first joined the band, was he kind of the guy where he always had that flash and that look that he did as David Lee Roth that we know, or was that something that kind of developed over time? And do you think maybe that had a big part to do with why they became so popular, knowing that disco and all that was kind of the main thing at the time, and a guy with that kind of flash, it almost seemed like it was a disco guy, but really playing metal,
Yeah, it's funny. Roth was a guy who, even before he was in Van Halen, was a guy who sort of dressed flashy, had long hair, and sort of, stood out among his peers. He was a guy at 12 years old. I interviewed people who went to middle school with David Lee Roth who said that, around the lunch table, David Lee Roth would talk about how I want to be a rock star right after someone else who said, I want to be an astronaut. And of course, people laugh when you say, I want to be a rock star. You're like, you kidding me? I want to be a lawyer. That's a possible thing to be. No one can be a rock star. That's Mick Jagger. And I think but Roth really, again, brought that, like you said, the flash. He was somebody who actually pushed the Van Halen brothers in a direction that they probably weren't very comfortable with at first, which is that when the Van Halen brothers performed backyards before Roth joined, they were in jeans and T-shirts, and Roth was the guy who said, hey, we got to dress up, we got to get some flashier clothes, costumes, and start to have a stage show. Nice. Where those guys were just like, we just stand around and play our instruments, and we play amazing, so everyone loves us, and where Roth was like, we got to do more. And Roth definitely also pushed those guys to get into nightclubs and to start to really try to make a career of it rather than just sort of playing for your peers in backyards.
Greg, when did DLR really get into the doing judo and karate and all the theatrics of talking about himself and his exercise routine? When did DLR really get into that?
I interviewed.
Was it the first time he got kicked out, or was it before that?
Yeah, it was before that. So I ended up interviewing a guy who went to high school with Dave and talked about that transformation that he saw. That Dave was probably doing, I think it was Kempo karate, pretty early on, maybe like junior high or middle school. He was doing it for sure, and then he started to do it more intensely in high school. And this guy was pointing out that Dave got more built and more defined and sort of got more cut. And so, I think he did it all along. I think though, when he ended up becoming a bigger star is when Dave really started to put two and two together and be like, I'm going to start to bring these karate moves, the kicks and do more of the big stage theatrics when they were playing arenas. I think Dave kind of put two and two together and go, I can use this stuff. I can use these different things that I learned from karate on stage, where, no one ever told me that, in a backyard party, Dave was doing like the Elvis karate moves and, in front of the stage or something like that. And so, but yeah, I mean, the guy was an athlete. He worked incredibly hard at what he did. He obviously don't try to jump off a 12-foot drum riser in an arena in the darkness, wouldn't touch your toes about having practiced that a few million times.
Yeah.
He can do all the karate moves, but he still can't beat a peanut allergy. That was one of the latest things. I think it was like 5 years ago where he had a peanut allergy attack while he was driving.
That's awful. Poor David. And now, kind of checking on some other things too. I mean, what was his, David Lee Roth, and I'm bringing it back to him because I just love David Lee Roth. He's such an amazing character, and he seems like he's out of Seinfeld because their characters were so always over the top, and that's what he brought. What was David Lee Roth's first band at Red Ball Jet? What did they look and sound like?
I think they probably looked a little bit like the cross between maybe the Rolling Stones and B.B. King, the way they sounded. I mean, they were really kind of a blues R&B band. And Dave was the guy who just sort of understood that, I'm going to make this into a show. And so they played stuff like Brown Sugar by the Rolling Stones, or they'd play, what else would they play? Like I said, B.B. King songs, they would play stuff like that. But Dave would be doing these dance moves, kind of grinding and doing these different things. And, again, this is a high school band. And I really would impress upon anyone who's listening, and you guys to think about that, how weird that would be. You're talking to your friend at the lunch table and be like, yeah, I'm going to play a show tonight. You should come see it. And then he's like doing all this stuff, look straight off, the Johnny Carson show or something like that, this weird variety act thing. People just thought it was weird. I mean, a lot of people thought it was just, off the wall because it's like, you're not supposed to do that. You're with your friends. You don't act like that. But Roth had a vision for entertainment.
Yeah, no, how about it? You got another one, Cody?
Oh yeah, Greg. So Eddie's been saying, the band right now, they just finished up, I think they finished up the tour. I know they were touring over the summer.
Uh-huh.
He was saying that, they're in a band of rock musicians, and then you have, David, who wants to put out dance records right now. And so, Eddie thinks it's really hard to even believe that they could ever put out another Van Halen album. Do you think, if the time is right, do you think there could ever be another Van Halen album, or no?
Yeah, I mean, again, it's like you never know with this band because time you think like you got something locked down and you don't understand what's going to happen, it ends up totally differently. But for me, the big issue to kind of consider is that they had 2 years in between them. They put out a record in 2012 called A Different Kind of Truth, and it was pretty successful. It did fairly well, and they had a good tour behind it. And but 2 years have passed, and they didn't do anything in between those 2 years. And I'm left to wonder what stopped them from recording music in between 2012 and 2015 when they went on the road and now. And so to think what's going to be different going forward, I don't know, unless there's some, issue behind the scenes, a health issue or something was preventing those guys from recording. It's hard to understand why they wouldn't have just sat down and written songs. And so it's hard for me to be optimistic, but again, it's just, you don't know what's going to happen down the road.
You got it. And two last things before we let Greg go here.
Oh, no. Hey, Johnny, I got one more question.
Okay.
Greg, do you think we could ever see, Van Hagar ever again, or is that totally out of the picture?
It's funny to hear you say that. I just watched Sammy. He played halftime right at the 49ers game the other day, and I'm thinking, Sammy's 68 years old. How much longer is he going to do this? And if they were going to do it, I couldn't imagine much more time going past. I mean, maybe Sammy could be up there at 70. Doing like Mick Jagger. I just, it's like, the vitriol between those guys, between Eddie and Sammy, was so bad in the last year, cursing each other out basically, or Sammy was cursing Eddie out over videos, messages being sent back and forth. It's hard for me to imagine that happening, but, again, it's like they can't seem to make on record with Roth, and so maybe that's a possibility. I mean, who knows? I mean, what do you think?
I mean,
Cody, what do you think?
I actually love Van Hagar. I got into, Van Halen when I was in, 7th grade.
Yeah.
First song I heard was Panama, everyone's first song. And, I was so young when I got into it. And that's when I was in a lot of, stupid jock rock. And then I heard, Van Hagar. And I was like, oh, man, this really connects with me. I'm in love. I have so much love. And, Sammy Hagar, he loves, too. David Lee Roth, he loved anything that came in his path, but Sammy Hagar, he had that deep love, and that's what I really connected with. So I'd like to see Sammy front that band again someday.
What about a DLR Van Halen tour with Sammy Hagar Van Halen tour, because they did do a DLR and Sammy Hagar tour together without Van Halen. I think that
I think they would go for one show.
You get the best of both worlds. I know it wouldn't happen.
It's funny that this thing to think about too is that they had the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame induction. What was that, like about 6 or 7 years ago? I can't remember what. It's like, they all could have showed up and done it like normal, like most bands, like be a normal band, and actually everyone show up and just do it. But of course, I think Mike Anthony and Sammy were the only two guys to show up for something, and it was just a total debacle. And so, yeah, I mean, it's like, can you imagine like one night only, like David Lee Roth and Sammy Hagar, and then Gary Sharon on the same stage? It would be fun, but I can't imagine it happening.
Yeah,
I love Sharon.
Yeah. So, all right, like I said, one more thing here before we let you go. Why do you think it was that it took somebody like you, Greg Renoff, to come here and write this book and kind of flush together all these details, about this, about Van Halen, how they got here, and how they've, basically went from becoming, Mammoth to turning into Van Halen?
I don't know. I mean, I think a lot of people who had looked at the band and written about the band, I think they just sort of got maybe caught up in the fame years, which is understandable because, you think about, the gold records and limousines and that stuff is great. I mean, I love learning about that stuff, but I think that they, because the band wasn't quote unquote famous, there was a little bit of overlooking that period that I think again is really maybe in some ways more interesting, but how those guys scraped to the top. And like you said, the Gene Simmons thing we started the conversation with about that. I mean, that's an amazing episode where you have the guy who's literally the most powerful man in the record industry, probably as a musician. I mean, the guy was in Kiss. Kiss is like everyone's poster on the wall in their bedroom, and Gene Simmons can't get you a record deal, and yet a year or so later you're have a gold record. It's incredible. And so, I think it was just maybe people just overlooked it because it was a little bit less shiny and obvious, in terms of the story.
Right. And now where can we get this book? Because I know I need to find it because I need to buy it for some people because I know Cody's going to read it. It sounds like, and I need to get my hands on it too. Where can I do that?
Yeah, I mean, probably the easiest and best way is Amazon.com. They have,
okay.
They have it discounted. It's like $11 right now, and they'll ship it to you in like 2 days, and that would be easy. You can certainly get signed copies of the book through the Van Halen store. That's VanHalenStore.com. They have signed copies of the book, and then you can hit me up at VanHalenRising.com. I can personally inscribe books for you. So if you want me to have a book, Dear Mom, you're the number one Van Halen fan I know, Greg Renoff, I can do that stuff for you and take care of you that way through that. And Barnes & Noble, iBooks for iTunes, Kobo. There's all sorts of different ways to get it. It's available pretty much everywhere. So, but again, the default place I'd say is Amazon, which can definitely get you the book immediately.
Yeah, you got it. We can also follow you at Greg Renoff on Twitter, and
please,
and check out that Facebook page too, man. You got some good stuff. You're throwing up some of the old time photos, some of the other things that got missed over the years. I thought that was pretty great. So I appreciate you coming on, Greg. Thank you so much.
Hey, no, real quick, John. Greg, what else do you listen to besides Van Halen?
What else do I listen to? Zeppelin, Rush. I'm kind of a classic rock guy.
Springsteen?
That's my thing. What's that?
Springsteen?
I never really got super into Springsteen, but I did in college spend a lot of time listening to Springsteen because I had a roommate who listened all the time. So
You are my guy. I appreciate that. I'm glad Keith gave you the children cheer there for me because I'm not a huge Springsteen guy at all. So
no. Wait, let me play the whole thing because I don't think you heard it right.
Oh, and on the sad note, but at least the show didn't. So thank you so much for coming on, Greg. We appreciate it.
Hey guys, it was real fun. Oh, thanks a lot for the time.
Thank you. That's a guy, Greg Renoff. You got to make sure you buy that book because it sounds like there's definitely some interesting stories there. And, our guy, Cody Van Cura, thanks for swinging on there, buddy. We appreciate having you and asking some questions here, man. It was good having your insight in a fun little segment like that.
Hey, no problem, buddies.
There you are. Thanks, Cody. All right. Well, and Bobbo, thank you to you, sir. And thank you to everybody for calling, everybody that was listening, everyone that texted, everybody that participated in the Jim Sarantia segment with hashtagging your questions, Ask TFG. So thank all those people, but especially thank you to our guests, Homer Bush, World Series champion of 1998, Check him out. Hitting Low in the Zone. He's got a new book. If you're looking at a young hitter, trying to find a way to straighten yourself out at the plate there, that's a great book to go check out. You should do that. Jim Sarantias at The Fantasy Greek on Twitter, at thefantasygreek.com. Check him out as well. Greg Runoff, find him on Facebook. Van Halen Rising, how a Southern Backyard Party Band saved metal. You need to check that out. And our guy Keith Grieve of 87sportsfans.com. I'm John Malors of 87 Sports Fans. Also Bob Sullivan of No Coast Bias. So thank you very much, everybody. Be sure to like the Johnny Bobbo Show on Facebook. Find us on Spreaker. Download us on iTunes. But most importantly, good.